Well, I want to welcome all of you and thank you so much for joining what we call the Checking In With series at VMDO. I'm thrilled to have Elliot Felix, founder and CEO of Bright Spot Strategy from New York, transforming the higher education experience. Thrilled to have Matt Shank, who's the president of the Virginia Foundation for Independent Colleges and professor emeritus from Marymount University in Arlington. And welcome Ben Knapp, who's the founder and director of the Institute for Creativity and Arts and Technology at Virginia Tech. So if I might ask you, maybe starting with Elliot, just give us a little bit more of a taste of your expertise and what you do.
We're a strategy firm on a mission to make higher ed more engaging, more equitable, and more impactful. Really, the best way to do that is to help institutions rethink what they offer in terms of programs, academic programs, and places, and how they operate and how they're organized.
Joe, thanks for having me with this esteemed group. Really appreciate it. In the brief introduction you gave, you actually gave me a promotion and said I was professor emeritus. I was actually president emeritus of Marymount while I was a professor for a long, long time, but I was happy to serve Marymount for 7 years as the president and then stepped down about a year and a half ago to become the president of the Virginia Foundation of Independent Colleges.
Yeah, I'm Ben Knapp, and Virginia Tech has a rather unusual organization, which is that we have a set of institutes that sit across our colleges. Every university has the vertical colleges across the different disciplines, and my institute transects all of them, and we do and fund projects and give students and faculty what we call time, space, and permission to work multidisciplinary across and between them. I say a lot that this crisis has pointed out the things we already knew were gaps and problems and challenges, and just made solving them or exploring them that much more urgent. So I run the Institute, ICAT, the Institute for Creativity, Arts, and Technology at Virginia Tech.
Beyond enrollment, financial stability, which will all be sort of an existential crisis and focus over the next few months, how do you think teaching and learning will be transformed?
I'll go ahead and get started because I may have a view that's slightly contrary to my colleagues on the panel, but you know, the reason that students attend schools that are private, relatively small, the VFIC schools range anywhere from 500 students to 3,500 students at the University of Richmond, but it's really for the entire experience and the on-campus experience. So you hear a lot of people talking about how the world of education, higher education, is going to change rapidly to only online or primarily online or things of that nature. And when I have that conversation with people, I largely turn back to, I think it's going to be more similar than different, just with enhancements.
Matt, I don't disagree. I feel like it's more of a both and as opposed to an either or. And I feel like a lot of times online and on campus are set up in opposition. And I think what's likely to happen, and what's in fact already happening, is that the two worlds are converging. And as campuses reopen in the fall, they're going to reopen as hybrid campuses. There aren't going to be large events. Interestingly, we just did a national survey, student experience survey, how early April, how students were feeling. And the bit that they're missing is all about campus life and community. So next to academic programs, students rank community as the second most important, but it's actually got the lowest scores. And I think when we asked students about what's their biggest challenge, it was separation from their community. When we asked students what are the things that their university is handling well, they said communications. And when they down near the bottom of the list of the things they're not doing well was community and belonging. So I think we're going to go back, but it won't be business as usual. It's going to be, how do these two, how do you get kind of the best of both worlds?
We've been thinking about this. This is just a opportunity to really examine what are the successes and failures and how do you do this. I do not see this ending. Say that magically there's a cure for COVID next summer. Everything we're talking about now continues. What is optimal about what we're doing right now? Well, you didn't have to drive here. You didn't have to get together. We didn't have to do all of the things. What is not optimal? We're not having any serendipitous ex parte communications, which is that community you're talking about. We didn't, go to Starbucks beforehand. We didn't do something afterwards. Hey, Matt, I'd like to follow up with you. You said something. I just want to quickly follow up with you on something. We're not having that. So the rigor of analyzing each of these techniques of communicating, of education, of performing art, all of these things is what should be there, needs to be there, and really, really just stressed very well.
Elliot, you brought up really student support and the seamless, vast network of bolstering up and ensuring that students get what they need, find who they need to get help when they need it, and ways that can and may happen online or in current setups, as well as looking toward the future, and if the whole student experience can benefit from some of the things that are going on currently.
So people have invented things, people have gotten leaner in terms of their processes so they can be more productive, spend more time helping students, less time, following, procedures that might be outdated. And I think the other thing it's done is it's enabled greater access, because I think one of the biggest challenges for student services is that most services are designed with two false assumptions. The first is that people know what help is available, and the second is they're comfortable and able to access it. And I think, what we tell people is, if you're waiting for people to ask all the questions they have, you're going to be waiting for a long time. The big downside or the big risk, I think, has to do with trust, because I think trust is better built in person, at least so far. If you think about all, many fully online programs start with an in-person immersion, so that students actually learn from each other and they build relationships that then continue online. And I think, if you're talking to someone in counseling or psychological services, or you're talking to, a career advisor, academic advisor, a lot of that is building up a rapport and a trust. And that can be harder to do online.
I was thinking of the Beyond Boundaries strategic plan and the way your work, interdisciplinary, collaborative, has reified or brought into sharp focus the way that it's about place, the way you describe, but it's also beyond that you're bringing together disciplines and community partners and global partners, and in a way defining that as a draw to Blacksburg. I don't know if you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting definition of place. Since we dissected the word virtual when we began, I can reuse that and say there is a sense of virtual place, which is a sense of belonging that may not have to do with physicality, but has to do with belonging to, as Elliot said at the beginning, that community, that culture. And certainly Virginia Tech has been really focusing on our motto, which is Ut Prosim, that I may serve, which has the larger reach of, as I said earlier, the human-centeredness, the human-centered approach. What do we do? How can we contribute? How can we look at the problems of the world and help explore them, but also the problems locally, and create interdisciplinary collaborations that will help solve, explore, challenge those. So our whole strategic plan rolls into, and as you said, Joe, rolls in all of those pieces of looking around. How do we design things from a human-centered approach? How can this serve the larger community? and really build that community. And so that then rolls all the way back to the beginning of the conversation that Elliot posed, which is, how do you build that community? What if that community isn't always physical place, but can also be new ways of connecting place together? What does that look like, and how can we build that community even stronger to support Virginia Tech, the universities of the Commonwealth, et cetera?
I might, in our last few minutes, ask each of you to just say what you're hopeful about or feels like a turning point that gets you very excited about what might be next.
Sure. I'll go back to my comment about the career program that we're trying to establish. And, my hope is that because of the crisis, that innovation is just accelerated and that great new ideas, come forward, and the schools are even stronger than before.
And I would hope for the outcome of all of this is new ways to make connections, new ways to have empathetic communication that we haven't thought of, that moves beyond what we're looking at right now on our screens, as I said earlier, in terms of embodiment, in terms of both human and conversations at a distance, mediated by technology. So that's what I really hope for, is that through this, we're going to be able to see of new ways of connectedness that we didn't see before.
Ben made a great point earlier about it's harder to be spontaneous digitally, and I agree. I will say the flip side of spontaneity is maybe intentionality, and I think when you're creating an online course, you have to be, or setting up a webinar, whatever it might be, you have to be much more intentional about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And my hope is that carries over to our new hybrid world, where things are online and on campus, and we're more intentional about them, about how students are learning, about how they're getting support, about how staff get their work done, about how faculty are engaged in the process. And I think, if we can bring some of the intentionality and the adaptability and the kind of measurement and accountability that are all, I think all happen maybe with greater prevalence online to our new reality, I think that would be pretty cool, because then we'd have a more engaging experience for people, and we could hold ourselves more accountable in terms of access and equity and opportunity.
So with that, I'd love to conclude checking in with Matt Shank, Elliot Felix, and Ben Knapp. Fantastic conversation, and I'm deeply appreciative to all three of you.